Hey everybody, Devin Alcoholic. Um, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy that we're gonna start on. We don't really know how many sessions will be, but we'll start out on a discussion and hopefully a conversation around the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, what I will say is important is I do have a sobriety date, which happens to be August 28th of 2011. Um, I have a home group in Brooklyn, New York called No Serenity Till Brooklyn. We have 4 meetings a week. I'm usually at our Sunday morning beginners meeting and our Monday evening big book meeting, unless I physically can't be there. And most importantly, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll talk briefly about some of the service that I've done over the years because I've found that the introduction for me getting interested in the traditions came through a lens of doing service outside of the home group. At my home group, I've done about every service position you could imagine from, right now I pass a microphone and I've set up chairs and I've greeted people. I've also been a member of the steering committee, which was a 4 year commitment. And 2 years of that, I was the overall chair of the group, which meant I chaired our business meetings and our steering committee meetings every month for 2 years. Um, and I got to learn a lot. I've also served on the board of the local intergroup here in New York City called New York Intergroup. I was the Brooklyn area representative for like a vacancy replacement. So somebody left their term because their job took them away, and I picked up for like about 8 or 9 months that last year, and then I became the Brooklyn area representative. But that took us into the lockdown in 2020, and in that moment, our secretary stepped down, and I rotated and became the secretary of New York Intergroup. Became an officer of that local office at our area level. I served as a GSR. I currently serve as an alternate, basically an alternate district committee member. But in New York City, we have chairs for our counties, or we have county structure, which is really kind of rare. So I'm the alternate DCMC for Brooklyn County, but my schedule is really not allowing me to show up for that one, unfortunately. Um, and I've been an area standing committee chair for cooperation with professional communities. I've been the archives chair for Brooklyn County, and yeah, I'm one of those people that I've always kind of, since I really got fired up here, I've had an institutions commitment going into jails and prisons and psych units and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a believer in service, and I'm a believer that it's part of our mandate here is to go and try to find alcoholics to help. And for me, one of the things that I will say about all that is the traditions have been the through line of what has kept all of that together as far as the structure of Alcoholics Anonymous all the way down to the home group. If I'm not mindful of these principles, then I don't think I necessarily get sober. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk about this stuff. And the other thing I'll say is it doesn't really matter how long you've been in AA. Every one of us has experience with these traditions. You just may not have thought about it specifically like with what we're going to talk about. But as a member, you have been participating in the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous. You have been participating in the fellowship, and you have experience that is valid. It's a little different than the steps where it's like if you haven't written a fourth step, you don't really maybe have the experience of understanding what a fourth step looks like. On the other side of that, through a fifth step, now if you were to sit down with someone, you have all this experience to show them. The traditions are more open because it is more about our relationships with each other and our relationships with the world. And so to me, that's really cool. It means that everybody here has something to contribute to the conversation. So whatever it is, if you feel compelled to ask a question or to say something, I would say, please. I welcome that. And I think it's important. And I think that's what makes AA what it is it doesn't matter how long you've been here, you have a voice and it matters, and you have a platform to be able to share. Um, so that being said, I'm gonna read the short form and then the long form of a tradition usually, and then I'll try to get into a discussion about it. Some of these will blur into each other, like one and two, in my opinion, kind of blur into each other because I feel like well, I feel like everything blurs into our first tradition, and we'll see as we go through these sessions that like ultimately all this stuff is about the unity and how we stay connected, not divided. Um, but so I'm going to read this first tradition really quick, and it says if you read the short form, It says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. And then in my book, in the very back, I got one of these little 12 and 12s in the back. They have the long form. And so the long form of Tradition 1 reads, each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a great whole. AA must continue to live, or most of us will surely die. Hence, our common welfare comes first, but individual welfare follows close afterward. And so one of the things that I'd like to invite everybody to think about is, how did you get sober here? How did you get to AA? I got sober walking into a meeting. I got sober because there was already a group, and there was people showing up, and there was somebody setting up chairs, and there was someone who had made coffee, and there was someone that was already there reading a script and chairing a meeting. I was able to walk into a fellowship that was fully functioning, waiting for me. There was a time in my life where I would like to tell you that if I just had a big book and it was just me and the big book, I would be able to be sober and get all these people sober and rock it out. But I think that's just crazy thinking. The reality is, the reason I'm sober today is there was a thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was a structure, and there was something for me to go to. And I found that most people, that's how you end up in AA, is you have a meeting to go to, or you meet a member and they take you to a meeting. And so this first tradition is first. It's kind of like the first step. If I don't admit I'm powerless over alcohol, and if I'm not able to see that I have this funny relationship, mind and body, where my mind keeps telling me taking a drink is a good idea, and once I start drinking, I have a body that keeps me drinking. If I can't come to that understanding, then why would I ever participate in any of the 12 steps? Why would I ever turn my will and my life over to a care of God, or even entertain the idea that there's a higher power out there that could help me? Why am I writing an inventory? I'm certainly not talking about this stuff within, all the way down the steps. I'm not going to do any of that if I don't have a first step. So in the 12 steps, you see the through line of my alcoholism and my relationship to alcohol that can carry me through all of these. And I believe that's kind of the intent within the 12 traditions as well, that each one of these traditions is going to boil us back to the most important thing here is that we realize there's no us and them. The most important thing in Alcoholics Anonymous is that we make sure that we do whatever we can and whatever personal sacrifice we need to keep Alcoholics Anonymous intact. Because AA was going on long before me. And I believe if I do my part effectively here as a member, that AA will go and be here a lot longer than I will ever exist. It was way more important for me to put the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous above myself. And so I'll talk a little bit about history of why do we even need to bring this forward. You'd think, in my mind, you'd think that this is like, of course we want AA to survive. And in the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, it started, 1935, we fondly say is the first year of AA's birthday, is the Dr. Bob, our second member of Alcoholics Anonymous, is sober date. We say that's the birthday of AA. And by the mid 40s, so 9 or 10 years into the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson had a little small office going. He had a secretary named Ruth Hawk, and she was like sending correspondence out to the different people that had wrote in and said, hey, we got a little group going in Roanoke, Virginia, or we're down here in Atlanta, Georgia now, and we got 3 drunks and we're meeting at a church. And as AA started to spread out a little bit from Akron, Ohio, and Cleveland in the Midwest where it started, and then in New York where Bill was living, as people started to get sober, they started to have groups in other parts of the country over here. And so they would try to do correspondence and write a newsletter. Here's what's going on, and be in touch with these groups because it was such a small organization. And in the mid 40s, they started to get all these letters back from the churches or the schools and the landlords that these meetings were at. And they would say things like, these people no longer come here. Please stop sending us mail. And what was happening was Alcoholics Anonymous was starting to take root in different places, and then it was fracturing and dividing and falling apart. And enough correspondence along those lines is what really got Bill to consider maybe we need some principles that are going to guide the fellowship as a whole to be able to stay connected. And so that's why unity became our, I believe, became our first tradition. That the most important thing is we got to stay together. And so I want to read a few things from this essay. I'm not going to necessarily read from all these essays, but I want to read a few things out of this first tradition. And I think in this essay, there's stuff that's obviously talking about this whole idea of AA staying whole, but there's also stuff that's directly, related to me as just a member and an alcoholic that needs to stay sober. So right here in this first paragraph, it's written that our lives, the lives of all to come, or I'll just read from the top. The unity of Alcoholics Anonymous is the most cherished quality our society has. Our lives, the lives of all to come, depend squarely upon it. We stay whole or AA dies. Without unity, the heart of AA would cease to beat. Our world arteries would no longer carry the life-giving grace of God. His gift to us would be spent aimlessly. I see that as kind of a charge here, that there's a gift that's been given to me as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I walked in the door suicidal, not seeing a future in my life. I saw no way out of the darkness other than kill myself. I did not see a life worth living. I thought that I wouldn't make it to 30. I had pinned myself in such this little tiny corner of what was available to me and what life was that it didn't make sense to live. And not only have I been able to see that was all a lie, and there's so much more available to me here, but the most important part is I'm not sitting here suffering from alcoholism today. I still have alcoholism, right? I have a mind that goes nuts about all sorts of other stuff, and if I don't take care of my spirit, I could very easily take a drink again. I mean, that's what alcoholics do, is we drink. But as a result of trying to practice this program a day at a time, I've been connected to this power and I've got this grace. And my charge here is to make sure that AA exists for people when I'm gone. One of my heroes was an ex-trustee out here, and he would say that, as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever happens here is happening on my watch. It was the first time I ever heard people start talking about, 50 years from now, if your grandchildren become alcoholics, I want AA to be here for them. And that was kind of what people deeper into the levels of service started to open my mind to, that like, as a member here, I have a responsibility to make sure that AA stays potent, to make sure that AA stays united and effective at carrying the message of recovery to alcoholics. And if I do it right, no one will know I ever was a part of it, because I'm not important. But generations later will have the same opportunity to receive this gift that I did. On the second page, I want to read this because this is like one of my favorite things in AA literature. And I think there's a lot of these woven through these essays, which is why I love that we have them. It's at the second sentence in the first full paragraph on Tradition 1. It says, the AA member has to conform to the principles of recovery. His life actually depends upon obedience to spiritual principles. If he deviates too far, the penalty is sure and swift. He sickens and dies. At first, he goes along because he must. But later, he discovers a way of life he really wants to live. Moreover, he finds he cannot keep this priceless gift unless he gives it away. Neither he nor anybody else can survive unless he carries the AA message. The moment this 12-step work forms a group, another discovery is made. That no personal... Right. That most individuals cannot recover unless there is a group. Realization dawns that he is but a small part of a great whole, that no personal sacrifice is too great for preservation of the fellowship. He learns that the clamor of desires and ambitions within him must be silenced whenever these could damage the group. It becomes plain that the group must survive or the individual will not. I think this is amazing. I mean, I want to go back because to me, this is really huge. So as an AA member, we're told it's a suggested program. How many times do we hear that one? It's suggested. It's all just suggestions. But if you get here, Bill is going, hey, the AA member has to. You have to conform to spiritual principles or you're going to die, is what he's saying. So to me, I mean, that's the kind of directness that I need. Look, my life depends on living a spiritually principled life. And what he's saying is if I go too far, I'm going to die. And and if I continue on that journey, at first it might seem like it's a penance. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, it's awful. I gotta do that inventory. I gotta pray. And then there's a moment where you look at your life, hopefully, and you go, man, this is actually incredible. I never could have imagined being able to feel this free, being able to feel this good, that I could be sober and happy, that people could actually invite me into their lives, that I could be given responsibilities again. And, all the things that we start to get when you can actually show up for your life sober and you do this program, you clean up the mess you made. And so that's been my direct experience that today I want to live this life. This is not a have to, this is a get to and a joy of living, to try to sit down and turn my life outward and be of service to the world around me and to go out and say, all right, God, I'm here to serve. And he talks about how the group starts when you carry the message. And that what I have to really watch out for is my own personal ambitions and desires, my pride, what I think is right, what I think needs to happen is potentially the thing that's going to fracture a group. And this is what we'll get to when we start looking at group conscience and what, like what we were just doing, having a discussion about what we want to do. In AA, there is no leader here. We all get together and God speaks through the collective wisdom and the collective voice of everybody. And my job is to accept that and not always fight it. Now there's more to that. But so I want to talk a little bit about my own personal, some of my own personal opinions. I think you do get some opinions in the traditions. So you're going to get some opinions. And maybe it's not an opinion, but this is just a thought that has come to me that I have found really useful. If the most cherished principle within our fellowship is unity, that's what's on the coin. I'm assuming you guys still have coins with like a circle and triangle, right? Over here we have the circle and then the triangle in the middle, and recovery is the first legacy. Unity is for us, it's on the left side, and service is on the right side of that triangle. When you look at it, it's recovery, unity, service, and that's what we call the three legacies of Alcoholics Anonymous. And each one of those has a set of principles behind it. Recovery, the principles there, the 12 steps. My own personal recovery, finding and developing a relationship with the God of my understanding and going out and sharing that and helping others. The unity piece is encapsulated in these 12 traditions. And then the service piece is encapsulated with the 12 concepts for world service. But so there's a through line through all of that, though. My question would be for consideration. If I need to live a life in unity to Alcoholics Anonymous, how could I do that if I'm not actually living the recovery program that is what Alcoholics Anonymous is based on and founded on? If I'm carrying Devin's plan for recovery or Devin's ideas about how you could get sober, am I really in unity with AA? And I would look right back at my 12th step, which says having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, which is pretty singular. The result of these steps that we just took, 1 to 11, is a spiritual awakening. That's the real promise of this work. I tried to carry this message. AA's message of recovery is the 12-step program of recovery. It's not necessarily, I mean, the fellowship and hanging out and meetings and all this other stuff is great, but AA's message is the answer for the alcoholic is developing a relationship with the God of your understanding. And here's the program on how we do that. Here's what clears that away. And so if I'm not carrying that message forward, am I really able to be in unity with Alcoholics Anonymous? And for me, that was a question that came to me that really gave me some pause to consider. Like, if my most important thing here is to make sure that I'm in line with what Alcoholics Anonymous is, have I taken an interest in looking at everything that's available here? Am I applying this program to my life? Or am I ignorant of a bunch of things? Am I being the fool, thinking I know more than I do? And so for me, that's what got me interested in our history. It got me interested in asking people with a lot more time sober to take me through these traditions and concepts, and just to try to learn. Because I do believe that's part of the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous, is to understand our history, to understand the history and how AA came to be in your area. Find out how did we end up with AA here? It's like, do I know that? Do I actually know the people and the steps that happened for you guys to have a group and to be sober? To me, that's fascinating, because I started to sit back and go, how is it possible that this was available to me? That I could be born in this little sliver of time, that in the first moment in human history, we have an answer for alcoholism. So to me, that's the kind of stuff that got me excited. And this first tradition, I think, lays the foundation, as I said, just like for the just like the first step gives me the onus that I have to understand. I mean, I'm not going to do this stuff if I'm not powerless. So as we go through the rest of these, we're going to end up back at this tradition one a bunch. We're going to end up back to, is this fracturing unity? Is this dividing us? And so the last little piece, I think, with all these that's really important is, right now we're talking about AA. We're talking about our group, our fellowship, our local community. Okay, I got to figure out how to quell my own ambitions and desires. I got to be willing to realize that it's what's best for everybody, not what's best for me. That there is no us and them, there's only us. I gotta start opening up to that and trying to find a ways to be in unity with each other rather than in division with y'all. But this is a principle that we can apply immediately in any relationship across the entirety of our lives. Some of us have families and have children and are married. Do we consider unity within our household? If I'm in a relationship at work with coworkers and I have a group that has to work on a project, do I consider, are my actions or what I'm saying, or is my participation here being divisive, or is it being unifying? Am I somebody who's carrying harmony out into the world, or am I carrying discord? I love that St. Francis prayer, because that's one of those lines in there. May I bring harmony where there is discord. And so for me, this has become a real thought exercise. And I'm going to read some questions. My current sponsor, has done a lot of traditions and relationship stuff, and we can make this available. I will just offer that the writing of what he wrote is like a dialogue about these, are all just kind of like his own. So this isn't like official AA anything. It's just an AA member that sat back and said, I want to take a look at this idea here and figure out how to apply it to relationships. But the way he wrote this first tradition was, our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. But he asked some questions. Number one, how does prejudice and narrow-mindedness affect unity with others? And I'm just going to read a few of these. Are you more of a giver or a taker in your relationships? How important is open-mindedness in a relationship? Do you express your thoughts and feelings to your partner freely? Do you use silence as a refuge or punishment while expecting others to read your mind? Have you defined your needs in the relationship and openly discussed them with the others involved? Can you be flexible in matters of what you want in a situation or what you desire in the relationship? Can you accept others as they are? How do fights, arguments, and controversies affect the unity of a relationship? Are you honest or self-deceived by your own thoughts and actions in the relationship? How does stubbornness affect your relationship and its unity? How healthy are your current relationships? There's a lot of questions, right? And we're not expected to have all those written down or committed to memory. But to me, the clarity around this is mostly about that. To me, these are all questions that put me in a different stance of looking at how I relate to you. That I was incapable. I was a self-centered, self-obsessed person. I was never thinking about any of this stuff. And so I'll share a little bit of, and my wife's over there, so she can yell and confirm if I'm talking out of step here. Um, she looked over, laughed. But these are some conversations that have taken place in our relationship when we first moved in together through, being married. One of the ones in the beginning, we were first living together about, I guess this was like 11 years ago, we moved in together. And I remember the question came to me. I said, what is it that you overlook because you love me that I might be doing around the house that drives you nuts? That if I was aware of, I might be able to change. And her answer was like, well, every morning you make coffee and like you leave the kitchen cabinet open. I always come into the kitchen and the cabinets are open. What are you doing? It's insane. Like really tiny, right? Little tiny nugget of a thing. Like it's the toothpaste in the middle of the tube stuff. It's the little pet peeves that might happen around the house. You're a toilet paper with it over the top or underneath. It's the little stuff that might slowly over time really drive people nuts. And for me, a big part of how to have unity in the household was we started really having a more open conversation. I'd go to my partner, I'd say, hey, I think I know how I could be a good husband to you or a good partner to you, but would you be willing to let me know how I could be a better partner to you? Do you feel supported? How can I do better? On a scale of 1 to 10, how have I been doing? If you get a 6, you're like, well, how could that 6 be like an 8? Like, but so to me, it was like the beginning of trying to start thinking about how are my relationships going? Am I walking into my relationships and am I taking people for granted? Am I doing things that might push you away? Am I doing things that might be, you know, again, the closed-mindedness, the stubbornness, am I walking into my marriage thinking I'm right, I know best, all blah, blah, blah. Do I do that at my home group? I literally had to make an amends to a lady on Sunday from my home group because of how I responded in a business meeting. It wasn't about necessarily what I had to say, but it was the way that I said it. And I felt it was callous and overbearing and childish. And I'd written some inventory on something else and it showed up. And I said, man, if I potentially made somebody feel how I feel right now, I'm not okay with that. And when I looked at my group, after the 2 weeks after the business meeting, I walked in and my friend, saying hi to people, and my friend didn't even look at me. She had brought something to the group that meant something to her, and I kind of loudly batted it aside. Um, and she didn't even look at me, And so I remember having that conversation with my sponsor the next week. I said, the next day, I'm like, yeah, she didn't even look at me, dude. I think maybe I should, there's something there. And he's like, well, hold on to that for a minute, you know. And when we finally got to get together was this last Sunday, and I part of the amends when I was sitting with her, I said, look, I really really apologize. It took so long for me to get here. And she looked at me and she said, I don't think I would have been ready to have this conversation until right now, anyways. So it's God's time. But to me, that's like a thing. I have to be, I'm looking at justifying my position, rationalizing where I'm right. But I was impacting the unity of my home group. Now, do I do that at my house? Do I think I know what's best? This is the way it is, my way or the highway? Is that really a unifying and nurturing environment for my family? How about at work? How about when I'm driving? Am I promoting unity on the road as a driver? To me, this is the fun of it, right? It's just food for thought. But is it possible that maybe my job here as someone who's waking up and trying to learn how to live by spiritual principles is about figuring out how to bring us together, how to empower you, how to be on your team no matter what what's going on. Or is my job to tear it all down and become the best? And to me, I think that's what this whole tradition is about is I'm going to have a lot of desires and ambitions and I know what's right and I know all these things, but my job here in life needs to be about having an open mind and being willing to find common ground. So with that, I'm actually feeling like maybe we should see what you guys want to say about this one. Sometimes I'll go right into group conscience because that's a great way to promote unity discussion. But I think right now I'm feeling that maybe we could find out like what are your thoughts on this stuff? Because I find it fascinating, but I'd love to hear if y'all have any questions, if you guys have anything you want to share on this whole idea of unity.
Please raise your hand if you have a question. Pawan, go ahead. We can't hear you, Pawan. We can't hear you. Now we can. Hello? Oh, okay. So, um, okay, uh, uh, I'm gossiping about a member from my home group to others, like kind of my dear friend. So, I think I'm actually spoiling my perspective of my home groups to other members of Alcoholics Anonymous. I I just need I'm not sure about it. Should I have? Is it the way it has to be do that or not? Because yeah, that's it. Please ask me if you did not understand.
I mean, I think was there a question in there about what to do with it, or just kind of reflection on that?
I think it was a question. He gossiped about his uh, home group, about his home group member to another close friend. So I guess his question is he breaking unity? And yeah, maybe what he needs to do next. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, surely nobody in AA has ever gossiped about another person in AA. But what I
Sarcasm.
would what
Yeah.
right. But what I would say is this is something I've had to look at for myself, right? I mean, I struggle with that big time. I struggle with having opinions on everybody, you know? I'm walk through the world. I'm a walking generator of an opinion about everybody that I've looked eyes on that day. I can't turn it off. But to your question, to me it was that reflection. It was when I started to have the reflection on, man, I might not be able to turn off the judgments that show up in my mind, but do I need to speak these out to other people? Does that fracture a group? What does that do when I maybe talk negatively about people in the world? Is that actually something that I want to be doing? And I think those are the questions and that I would pose to you. Like ask your heart. I don't know. I'm not an authority, right? I'm not somebody who has authority here. But if it weighs on your heart, and if this discussion is opening you up to go, maybe that's not unifying, maybe that is dividing us. then it's like, to me, that would be that intuition. That would be more in line with how God I experience connection with my creator. Is I start to think about things and I go, man, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's not because my sponsor told me not to do it, but it's like within my heart, I've had that my heart open a little more and I go, I don't want to treat people like that. I don't want to do that. And I think that's what ultimately, hopefully, this whole journey of looking at these traditions, it just opened me up to more considerations. It opened me up to maybe there's more for me to think about than, oh, I just got to pray and, oh, I'll just ask for forgiveness from God later. Go and blow up a bunch of people's lives today, but God will forgive me, right? That's what God does. Like, I can't live like that anymore, you know? But but that came more from me being open to starting to think about these as ideas and go, man, if unity is important, like, am I blowing that? And I don't want to do that. Um, so I would say, just if that's the kind of thing that's starting to come to you, I would sit with that, right? And I would see about honoring it. And if you're going, man, I don't like that I'm doing that, then maybe that would be like, I can take that to God. Maybe I'm having a 6 step experience. Maybe I'm becoming willing to have God remove that part of myself. And I can start getting quiet in the morning and saying, hey, if you want to show me how to not do this anymore, I'm open to it. I'm open to being changed. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, 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 clearly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Karan.
Hi, Raman. So my question was about what you raised about having conversations at home, right, with the family members. Um, I don't know if this is a cultural thing or if it is a part of my dysfunctional family that we generally don't have conversations so openly. We just push it under the rug. Uh, and Off late, I'm seeing my family taking a lot of doing a lot of running the house type of stuff. They do the household chores. Uh, they do their business. They take care of other family issues and all these things. So whenever, just let me give you an example. The housemaid, yeah, see the housemaid quit a month ago, and I see my mom and my aunt trying to double up the efforts, trying to clean the vessels and doing all that. So I said, okay, I'm going to clean my vessels. I'm going to try helping them clean do the dishes. And once they started doing that, they said, we don't want you to do this. Uh, I can see that they're getting frustrated. They're getting burdened by what all they have to do. But once they started trying to be of help to them, they don't allow me to do that. And this is causing, and they have occasional blowouts where they are frustrated and burdened by this, and they have fights at home and all these kind of things. So how do I put these things forward to them? I mean, when they're clearly denying me from being a part of it.
I mean, that's a great question. And I think, it might be one of those where it's like a bummer, but it's like, I'm not sure, right? I don't know if I have answers, right? But I guess I would offer that, I'm powerless over alcohol. I'm also powerless over other people. The one thing I know today is that God is doing the heavy lifting in my life. Um, and maybe my job of what I can do is I can show up and I can be open and I can try to be a demonstration. I don't know what that's going to do, but I think when it comes to cultural traditions and family, not everybody is going to just, oh, my child or my partner is all of a sudden way more open and changing. That's not going to necessarily change everybody. But one of the things I've found, like with my partner and it's like I'll come home or there'll be moments where she's going through something. She's not feeling too great, or there's a lot of anxiety or work stuff or family, whatever it is. There's something's going on where she's not, like feeling like it's a great day. And sometimes the best question I can do is, hey, is there anything I can do to be useful? I love that question. It's like, hey, I'd love to be able to be helpful here, useful. Is there anything I can do to be helpful or useful? And I just can ask that to somebody and then try to listen. And sometimes they'll say no. And I'm like, well, I'm here. Like, let me know if there's anything I can do. And sometimes people won't want that help. I found that potentially just opening the door for a conversation, whether the conversation happens immediately, has also been something to try to do. Um, I made that amends with the lady at the home group, and at the end, I said, I just want you to know that, as far as I'm concerned, this is an open conversation. If you ever have anything that pops back up and you'd like to readdress any of this or anything comes, like I'm willing to talk about that whenever. And I think that that's part of potentially what can happen with family stuff is we start a conversation and say, hey, like I'm open to feedback. I want to be a better family member. I want to be a better brother or a better son or a better husband in our family. And I think I might know what's going to do that, but I also feel like I might not. And so if there's ways I can do better, please let me know. And to me, it's kind of like an outgrowth of an act of amends, but it's also like I'm here to try to promote unity. And it may not be that people in our families change, or it may not be in a slow process. It could be 10 years down the road. You're sitting there and you go, man, we're having a totally wild conversation for my family. Like we never talk about this stuff. And that could be a long burn of 10 years of just being like, I'm here to just foster unity. Um, so I don't know if there's an answer in that, but I would say that, you know, part of it is maybe there's just stuff I can do without asking. Can I just go and do some chores, do some things that are bothering people? If that's not my place, then, obviously don't do that. But maybe I can open the door and say, hey, like I want to be able to help here. I want to do XYZ, but if you ever have anything that is on your mind of how I could be better, like I'm open to feedback and and just see if there's possible way to start a conversation. Um, but yeah, I might have to think on that one. Maybe we could talk offline a little bit too and give a little bit of time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the family dynamic is always the hardest. This is the people that we have the most history with, the people that we have. The joke over here is they installed the buttons so they know where they are to push them, right? And it's like this is the hardest thing I think for alcoholics. Where in our literature, Bill even wrote like we seem to have an inability to form a true partnership with any other human beings. That our real issue ultimately is we don't know how to play well with others, and and I think that's driven by the extreme self obsession that runs all of us. And so number one, how can I find out being in unity with my family? Well, I can make sure that I'm not coming to the table completely run by self will, and make sure that the recovery program is active in my life. And I can try to pause and I can try to be open and watch for the fear and the resentment and the selfishness and do what I need to do to try to have that channel to my higher power open so that I can be a demonstration of that at home. But then I can also try to offer that I'm open for some direct feedback. And I mean, I've taken that to, with almost everything in my marriage, and I need to keep going back. And sometimes she gets loose. There was a period where I was asking her too much on a scale of 1 to 10. How am I doing? And she was like, just knock it off. I'll let you know if you're doing something stupid. So we could take this to a part where we annoy people, right? But I'm a big fan of like go directly to the source, be be open about it, don't mince words. If I'm trying to be useful and helpful, I haven't found people be too turned off by that. Uh, but I think we had some other hands up too, and you had raised your hand again, Karan.
Is that a follow-up question, Karan? If so, yes. Go ahead.
I'll probably go after Lois because we raised his hand before
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go.
That's a practice of unity at work there. Karan. Thank you. Um, Not sure if my earphones are coming through. Okay, thank you. So, hi Devin. I'm Lohit. I hear a lot about you from our folks here in Hyderabad, but for the first time I'm seeing you. I really liked the whole conversation. What I liked the most, I feel, which is very relevant to the context here when I'm working with alcoholics here, my sponsees. I'm trying to, you know, tie down that goal, right? To actually do your 12 steps so that you can go and pass it on. And we also talk about how having a home group is important. And also, we have actually a big event coming up. It's an anniversary of an area committee. And just a while back, Karan and I were talking about how do we get more people into group positions and group service. I mean, there's a small percentage of people who have home groups, and a very fewer of them take positions up in their groups. So I came up with this idea that, hey, you know what? We should distinguish and say, give the guys who are holding good positions a separate badge. And all these people who are going to see these around and are going to go like, oh, what badge is this? I want that. And that's how push their buttons and get them to come get involved in service, get a home group and all of that. But that's my aggressive approach, right? Because I go out to rehabs and I go out to places and I could use a lot more volunteers. And honestly, they whatever they have, whatever step they are on, they do have something to offer. We go to places where they're even ready to, they like to hear that they're sober for a while, forget about all the things coming back what they've lost. So it's gets very frustrating sometimes, which is why I came up with this. But it sure looks like not a good idea to do that, because that doesn't really sound like it's aligned with the first traditions. But what could we do? Like, what can we do within the, maintaining that love and harmony, but yet making people feel, incentivize people to come into group service and push them. Like, yeah, I like that idea of giving context to how we got here, the group story. That was very nice because that touched me too. But what else can we do? It was my question. Thanks.
I mean, what I will echo is that's the question that we all have. That, we're, you know, I go to an area assembly in a city, in an area for southeastern New York that has like over 1,500 registered groups from, New York City, the five boroughs, Long Island, and then just outside of the city, and you'll maybe get 200 GSRs. Like we got 1,500 groups and we get 200, but 200 is still a lot, but it's like, how do we get people to participate? And I think it's, my experience is we got to make it attractive, but not cheesy. If that's maybe the best way to put it. And I think for me, it's always what has gotten me motivated was really having a strong first step, for lack of a better understanding. Like, my life depends upon my participation in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my participation in Alcoholics Anonymous needs to be in equal proportions with the recovery, the unity, and the service legacies. And so I need the steps because that's connecting me to God and that's giving me this connection. But I need y'all. I need a home group and I need a place to be so I can try to find people to help. And I've found that doing a position is what allowed me to start feeling like I belonged. And I've tried to convey that in ways that hopefully connect it back to the hopelessness of alcoholism. I came in here totally broken. I don't know if it's the steps alone that got it, if it's me having a home group and doing the steps, or if it's me having a home group doing steps and doing service. I don't know which one of those I could get rid of that's going to allow me to stay sober. So I'm just going to keep doing them all. And I think it maybe goes into that piece that I read. At first, we do these things because we have to, and maybe we have people that have to, and then we start to realize that the way of life that we're getting to live is something we want to do. And so, I mean, I see there's like a lot of people that get, try to be over the top excited about stuff. And, I'm one of those like more dark, cynical people. So when I see someone who's like overtly enthusiastic and, I'm like, come on, dude, that's lame. But if I can connect it to like, hey, I got a life-threatening illness. And what's also cool is like at one day sober, if you have a home group, like you have a voice and you have a vote. and like the only way I get a voice is if I have a home group that actually carries the group conscience of my group down the triangle to my area assemblies, to my delegate, to the conference, which, we'll hopefully continue to get to talk about if we go into some service stuff. To me, it's like, hey, if you're new, you know what? Guess what? You just got to vote, bud. You're 3 days sober. You join the group. You got a voice here. You matter. And if there's a way to help, I think, give someone that understanding, like, we need you. We need you. I'm not better than anybody in AA. I'm just a member. So one of the things I've tried to understand is that, like, maybe my journey is to meet certain people. And I feel like I can be useful to almost anybody if they're willing to follow through on this stuff. But there's going to be people that need to hear from each one of you. And there's going to be people that need to hear from those that you sponsor. There's going to be some alcoholic somewhere that needs not me. They need somebody else. And so when I meet people that are new, part of what I'm trying to do is get them excited about the idea that, hey, you have a purpose here. We don't know what that is yet, but if God brought you to AA, chances are there's some drunks out there that need you to show up and help them. And if we can get you excited and maybe get you, like, you want to come and greet somebody or help me, it's like, it's almost like just bring people in and get them doing service before you give them an official position. Hey, why don't you come with me and we'll just welcome people in the door and shake their hands and say hello. You enjoy, like, you want to help me take the chairs down? Can you come early? I need some help with the coffee. And like, maybe we can start just like getting people and inviting them in. But making service attractive is tough. And I think the old, not joke, but the saying over here is, it's 5% of the people doing 95% of the work or whatever. And I feel like that could be a little patronizing. But I think sometimes it might be like, I'm here, I'm going to do that. My life's on the line. And I hope that I can convey to you that if your life's on the line, you can get the same kind of freedom that I've found by doing all these things. And maybe it's less what I tell you to do and more how I'm being, the way that I'm living. Maybe that's what's attractive. And that guy that struggled for 5 years but keeps seeing me up there doing service and being here and doing this thing, maybe at some point he's like, all right, bro, what do you got? As I've had those people. I've got people that came to my home group and they heard me say, speak at our big book meeting, just raising my hand, and they went, F that guy, and I'm never going back to that meeting. That guy's full of it. And then like 3 years later, they're like, man, I went through the big book and did the steps and really like came back, and I was like, that guy was onto something. So it's like, maybe that was useful, that I pissed somebody off just by raising my hand and sharing my experience. But yeah, I think, can I encourage people? Can I make service available to people? And my home group has a whole slew of alternate positions and like crew positions. Like if you want to join the greeter team, you can be 5 hours sober and you can stand out front and welcome people to the meeting and shake their hands. If you can come early next week at 6:00, you can help put chairs up and put the meeting it's like, if someone's new, we'll say, hey, if you want to come back next week, we could use you here. And try to figure out like getting hooks in people by making them feel like they're necessary. So I don't know if that makes any sense. I feel like this is the age old thing of how do we get more people to do stuff. And if we start to feel like we're beating you over the head where you have to do this and then it's bad. But is there a way to like lovingly encourage people that, hey, like, you're important. We need you. And we could really use some help with this, and invite people in and try to, walk with them, show them what to do. Come with me. I got something to do. Take the new guy to the hospital. Take the new guy to the detox. Be like, hey man, I got a thing. Come on. I'm going to speak, but you come and hang out. Next week, if you're still sober, maybe we can get you in there, and just try to, go for it. There's a few other hands, and I hope that answers this question or is helpful.
Yeah, I think Lohit nodded his head. So let's go to Karan. Karan?
Yeah. So it's just a continuance to the family question which I asked. Okay, there are certain things which I can definitely help the family, but there are certain things like, suppose, for example, doing my own laundry, right? Until this time, until I got into recovery, my family did it for me, and I let it be that way because they were unburdening me from what I have to do. off late once I started getting into recovery when people said, do your laundry, do your sheets once you wake up. And I started doing that. But once I started doing my laundry, my mom is like, no, let me do it for you. Don't do it. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to bother her. And he says she'll do my laundry today, and it will be a week after that he actually puts it in the washing machine. So I'm having dirty clothes, and I don't, I'm not having stuff to wear. So how do I draw lines between personal, running my personal arrangement, and say that okay, this is my stuff, let me do this, and, because sometimes they get too into my life.
Specifically with the laundry, I was just thinking about the Serenity prayer. You know, well, they said they were going to do it, but it's been a week. But I could also do it. I mean, I feel like for me, at least with some of that, it's like the practical thing. Like if someone says they're going to do something, but I can take care of it, and it's something that needs to get taken care of, and it's not done, then it's like, well, let me just go do that. And the old saying over here is like, it's in the movies or whatever. If you want something done, do it yourself, kind of thing. So I would say with some of those things, it might just be in the moment as it's going. I'm really open to accept the kindness that people want to offer. If your family is like, hey, I want to do this for you, like, well, who am I to say no? If this is something you want to do, like, absolutely. But if all of a sudden it's like, hey, you said you were going to do that, but that was 2 weeks ago and I actually need that done, like, well, maybe I can just go get it done. Um, and I feel like some of that might just have to be like situational, right? As you're living. If I'm looking, I'm going, man, I got two more pairs of clean underwear here. Maybe I should just do some laundry tonight and not rely on other people to do this thing that I can do. But if they're willing to do it, I mean, I would accept that they're doing it. Um, but so I feel like some of that is just if, you know, might just come down to like taking a real look at and planning and taking the responsibility of making sure that whatever needs to be done is done. And if sometimes things get done for you, amazing. I'll come home, my wife will have done something around the house, like clean some stuff. And I'm like, that was amazing. So happy you did that. I'm terrible at cleaning up around the house. I'm barely home. I'm going to leave the house in whatever we close this thing down in 13 minutes because I got to run. I'll be home 12 hours later, just in time to sleep. And that's most days right now. Um, but yeah, I would say, perhaps there's things you gotta, you can only see her in the background. I look over and my wife is just standing there shaking her head going, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We'll have to do at the end of this, we'll have to do a wrap up where we get my wife to come in and actually you can ask her questions about if any of this is real and she'll give you the real truth. That'll be good. She said no, she doesn't want to do it. Um, but yeah, I think part of that's can I do it myself? Then let's go take care of it if I need it to be done. Because what am I doing then? I'm just going to get resentful at my mom. She said she was going to do this thing, she didn't do it. And then I'm going nuts, and it's like, oh, maybe I just need to clean that one up. So I don't know if that one's helpful, but I would, I think with each one of those, it's maybe situational. What's really going on? Is this something that I can maybe do on my own? Then like, hey, if I put aside 2 hours and go do some laundry, done, or whatever I need.
Okay.
Karthik, go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question is with respect to unity. See, the group member or as any member in a committee or anywhere, I have the responsibility or it's my duty to make sure my voice is heard instead of fear of what people will think. So I keep doing that, but people get offended. I try to put it as lovingly as possible, as softly as possible. Even then, people get offended, and I receive feedback that all I do is criticism. You know, but I was looking, but it is, uh, you know, it is again. I don't gossip outside usually. I improve by God's grace over there. And but when it is happening around me or within a group, I definitely try to tell what is right or what is spiritually I think you guys are going wrong. So Yeah, I know that you also face such situations, but I need to have the balance between how do I get over the fear of not saying what I'm supposed to say, uh, thinking that I may break unity, and also saying it so that, I'm not rude, I guess. So, any experience on this and what I should be doing?
I mean, I would say that this really feels like exactly what I was, going through when I ended up having to pull a member of my home group aside and sit down and have a one-to-one and really make an amends for how I shared in a business meeting. Um, and I think what I'll say, I think this is a complicated one that we're going to struggle with for. I mean, at least I speak for me. I'll probably struggle with this one for forever. I've always kind of, not always, but I usually feel like I'm a bit of a contrarian. And what I mean by that is the experience that I've got out of this program is not necessarily in lockstep with a lot of the recovery that I see in the fellowship directly in my area. Um, and so I've been to many meetings where they pick a topic or it's a step or it's a something, and my experience is directly opposed to what people are talking about in the meeting. And I really struggled in the beginning because it was almost as if I had had this experience with the 12 steps and I had had this, what felt like, was a real awakening and transformation in my heart and in my spirit. And then I would judge, my mind started to try to use and like weaponize that as I'm better than these people and I know better. And I think that's like what I read, that whole idea about, what I really need to watch out for to be making sure I'm bringing unity to the group is my own personal ambitions and desires. Now, next week, when we get into the second tradition, we'll get introduced to two characters, quotes, characters within AA. And those are the elder statesman and the bleeding deacon. And this is where we start to talk about the difference between trusted servants and like a top-down leadership and how we work as a group in order to maintain unity, right? um but it comes back to the simple understanding that as a member of AA you are the most important. Your voice is important. If you are the loud minority, that's fine. If you're the loud majority, that's fine. um but what's not fine is to not allow everybody else to have an opportunity to participate. And what I've found is the harder thing, and what I really had to make amends for this couple of days ago. I will say, from my perspective, I was not making amends for what I said. It was how I said it. And to me, that is the great difficulty is how I convey and myself a lot of times. Because it wasn't that I said things that I don't agree with and don't believe in, and I don't believe were, intuitive thought that I need to share. It was the way I said it. And it was the fact that I pulled what is probably the most egregious move of it all, which was I'm probably one of the longest standing members of my home group at this point. I mean, we've been a group for going on it's like 14 years, maybe going on 15. I've been there for 11 years. And most of the people that started it have kind of moved away or are not there. So I'm one of those people. I'm a past overall chair. I'm a past steering committee member. I've been there for so long. I've watched people count days that are now 8 years sober on the steering committee. You know what I mean? It's like I was there when you were a newcomer, right? I had time sober. And so I pulled out and I said, if we were to go ahead and try to do something like this, I would probably have to leave this, go find a new home group. Always a good thing. Try to manipulate the group. I'm going to leave if I don't get my way. Not a good look. So it's like that's what I had to make amends for, was the childish way that I shared what I shared. But what I had to express, I believe in my heart, was part of the discussion, was important. And so to me, that's what I kind of need to balance here is how I speak, how I express myself to make sure that I don't try to come down and kick anybody to the curb and say your ideas aren't valid. It's like the reality is, as a member of my home group, you have a valid, like you have a voice and you have an opportunity to come in and speak your mind. And you deserve an open mind and an open heart from me because that's what I want from other people. And at the end of the day, though, I'm not able to control how people react to what I have to say. And so that to me is the difficulty. I'm not trying to actively make people angry. And if you don't like what I said, but I know what I said was calm and it was loving and it was open, you just don't like it, then I can't control your reaction. But if I'm looking back and I go, yeah, that was overbearing and wrong and childish and rude, and I can see that it's caused some division here, then like I need to go and take a look at that. So it's like it's that gray area of life. So I don't know if that answers the question at all, but I look at it like I have to say my piece. I'm called to speak my heart and my mind. But how I do that, I think, is where I need a lot of help. That's where I need to get with God and get quiet and make sure that I'm speaking in a way that is loving. And the prayer that I've come to years ago was, God, please help me to share so they can hear me. Get quiet and say, God, give me the words that they might be able to hear. And like I was at a meeting last night, speaking at a meeting last night, and I introduced myself for years as a recovered alcoholic because I've recovered from the hopeless state of mind and body I walked in as. And just doing that would piss people off. I watched it in meetings. I would say, I'm Devin C, a recovered alcoholic. And if it was a closed meeting, which I might have to scrub the tape for that one now. But if it was a closed meeting, I'd introduce my full name as a recovered alcoholic, and people would go up in arms about calling yourself a recovered alcoholic. And I literally, recently stopped doing it the last couple of years because I wasn't trying to create controversy just by introducing myself. And I went to a meeting last night, and there was a guy with 38 years celebrating, and his sponsor had 38 years as well. And he got up there and he introduced himself as Paul, a grateful, recovering alcoholic. And the first thing he said, he goes, and I want to introduce myself as a grateful, recovering alcoholic. I've heard some of those big book people call it recovered, but the day you hear me say that is the day I'm in trouble because I'm still recovering and I'm going to always be, he went on the whole thing about how it's a progressive illness and you don't cure it. And I'm with him on that. And all I could do was get quiet and say, God, help me to share in a way that they could hear me. This room full of people is a different group of people. I might need to adjust my behavior. I might need to amend how I approach giving a talk. And if I'm open to asking God to direct that, what I've found is I've given wildly different talks at different groups and different meetings. You go to a conference and it's a bunch of people really fired up and in the big book, and that pulls something completely different out of me. Us having this conversation, you guys are pulling something completely different that might be a group over here. And so to me, that's kind of the whole thing is I got to be and try to get in with my heart and then invite God to direct those things. Because I get really passionate about the thing that saved my life. And I get really passionate that like everybody who's an alcoholic could get sober. And I want that for everybody. But my way is not the only way. It's just what's worked for me. And it's been really hard to not try to impose me on everybody else. So I think it's an incredible question. I think I maybe talked too long on an answer, but that's been the struggle. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I get your point. So, it is important for me to, definitely, uh, you know, put out my voice there because if I'm not doing that, I feel that I'm not doing my duty. So I don't know if you agree with that, but that's my thinking. I need to put out my voice there. But how I put it out is important, as you said.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's our responsibility. I'm a group member. I have a voice, so my voice is important. If God shows up in the collective conscience of all of us talking, then my voice is just as important. But your voice is also just as important as mine. And I think that's the leveler. I'm not more important than anybody here. And am I willing to have an open heart and open mind to all of you? And am I able to try to speak from a place of love? And if I think if we find that balance, right, we can disagree lovingly with other people and not need to be right. And that's what we'll get into talking about next week then is, do I accept that the group conscience is how God shows up? I think that is the line between who is a bleeding deacon and who is an elder statesman. I have had many things that my group, I have suggested to my group, and they've said, not doing it. And it would behoove me to just say, like what I said, why I had to make this amends. Well, if you guys don't do what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave. That sounds very
Yeah,
immature
coming
and
back.
childish. Go ahead.
Yeah, coming back to that, there's this in this fellowship, there's this saying, if you don't like the group, all you need is a resentment and a coffee pot to start a new group. But that goes totally against this, right?
Yeah, I think this is the great debate. There's plenty of meetings that have gotten started off of a resentment, right, in a coffee pot, and we'll talk about some of that in the fourth tradition of autonomy, right? Like part of my responsibility as an AA group is to be a good neighbor, to realize that I'm not trying to start a new meeting and take a bunch of people from the other meeting. I need to support all the meetings. We don't need to overdo it and divide ourselves up. But but yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's, how I share what I share and being willing to accept if I'm in the minority and people hear what I have to say and they say, yeah, we hear you. We don't care. For a long time, I really I mean, I still do dislike the format of our beginners meeting. We changed it and it's morphed into this thing where I just feel like it was better when it started. And I used to go to the meeting and then I'd pull aside the chair and I'd be griping about how we need to change things and how awful. And it used to be so much better. And it hit me one day. I was like, this isn't helping. I need to come to my home group and support my home group. This is drawing a bunch of people to the meeting. People are having a good time. People are making friends. They're getting connected and watching people stay sober. And if I don't like the format of a meeting, so what? It serves our home group as a whole in a much bigger way because it's the social meeting of the group where everybody comes on a Sunday morning and they go and they get breakfast and coffee together and they hang out and they go to the park and they go to movies and it's just the big social one. And but yeah, it's like if I'm sitting there talking negatively about stuff, I think that fractures the unity. And so it's like, well, it's not always going to look how I think it should look. And what that's shown me is that I'm not God one more time because the group is still healthy and people are still getting sober. And, it's all good. And so to me, I think that's the biggest piece, right? Like I'm just, at the end of the day, the one thing we know in AA is we're not God. And so what I'm called to is to consider that what's more important here is what's best for everybody versus what's best for me. And I'm going to have to cut this one and we'll pick this up. This is going to be, and for me, this is really fun. As I said, we were talking about what we're going to do this is really fun. So we talk about some stuff and then we can have like an open forum discussion about it. And we're all going to be talking about unity stuff. But when you get to like a general service conference, excuse me, and they have these items that we're looking at. And this is kind of a convoluted story because it's more something I'll tell and write a decision. But I want to share a story of a vote that took place and how it was thinking about common welfare coming first. Before, way back in the day, they have a pamphlet now for like AA and the African American over here, right? Specifically targeted for people that are African American descent or not white people, effectively. Now, New York City and Area 49, where I'm at, is a very diverse group of people. And we got together as an area and we were asked about that question by our delegate. What do you guys think about, do we need to spend money on a pamphlet for the African American? And our area was really diverse, said, why would we ever do that? We don't need like, that's just separating us. That's just creating a division where we don't need to. And so we told our delegate, no, we're not down. Well, our delegate went to the conference that year. And when she was sitting there, an older gentleman who was a delegate from the deep South, like Louisiana or Alabama or somewhere where, it was like an old slavery thing. And it was, not until civil rights got passed in our country, which is like in the 60s, that some change started to really take place there and what was going on in the South. Some really awful part of American history, right? And this guy got sober before that legislation had passed. So he got sober pre-civil rights when it was still deeply segregated, like the whites only over here, the blacks only over here kind of thing. And he was 35, long time sober. So in this discussion that AA was having at the General Service Conference that year about, do we create this pamphlet? This guy got up to the mic towards the end of the discussion and he raised his hand and he got up and he said something along these lines. He said, I was dying of alcoholism to the point where I was either going to take my own life or I was just going to go and die because I was so sick if I kept drinking. And the only thing that anybody could suggest to me was we had heard of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was in the whites part of town and I was not allowed over there. He goes, but I had gotten to the point where I knew my life was going to be basically over anyway, so I didn't really care what happened to me. And so I decided to drive over to this part of town that I didn't belong in and park in this church parking lot. And he goes, I sat in that church parking lot and I watched all these white folk go up into that church and I wondered if I was going to be hanging by a tree later. And I walked into that meeting and I got met open arms with the unconditional love of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got sober that day and I've been sober ever since. Because I don't believe anybody should ever have to question if Alcoholics Anonymous is for them like I did. And I'm really glad that Alcoholics Anonymous is what it is. Because I found y'all and I've had this incredible life ever since. And he went and sat down. Now in our area, we think this is stupid because we're diversified and, we have all the stuff. But when we start to consider, what does it mean to consider what's good for everybody? How many other places still hold on to that kind of hatred or that kind of experience that this member of AA came and expressed? And so our delegate was like, yeah, go for it, make it. That could benefit beyond our area. That's bigger than us. That's maybe going to help more people. Go for it. And so I think that's part of the consideration in this whole first tradition is, am I able to open my mind to realize that like there's more than just my world? And can I keep an open mind and an open heart to everybody and try to find out, well, like, are we making decisions that's inclusive for as many people as we can? Are we making choices here that are going to bring more people to the fold and more people together? And I would say with the caveat of without compromising the integrity of our message. AA does not need to change the message of how you recover here, but we want to make sure that you know that you're welcome. And as a member of a group, my job is to make sure that you feel welcome. My job is to make sure that you understand you have a voice and you're important. And you could be here 3 days or 30 years. That doesn't mean the guy with 30 years has more of a say. And so I think all that is the underpinning then of every tradition we're going to talk about. As we go through this, we're going to start to be able to see that all these other ideas would start to fracture the groups. And then we can try to then hopefully bring this stuff into our families and into our jobs and into our communities. And to me, it's really fun. I'm going to have to pin this one for this week, and maybe we can close this one out and we can pick it up next week.
Yeah, let's close it with a prayer of your choice, David.